Hello, everyone. My name is Miranda Rice. I am an artist here in the ATL GameDev group. And for my presentation, I just want to go over my process for character design. My hope here is there's something to take away for both artists and maybe some things to talk about for people who are less artistically inclined. Uh, and so yeah, we're just gonna kind of go over my general process when designing a character. So the first thing is, who am I? General introduction. My name is Miranda. I'm aspiring concept artist. I have my BFA in game design. I've done commission work over the past few years. I was one of the artists on Void Souls. And I have a love for everything character design. I love making little guys. Um, So the first step when designing a character is understanding who or what we are designing. The first step in designing any character is understanding who they are, what is their story, what is the purpose in the game, what is their personality. If we understand who, what, when, where, and how, this will kind of help bring more personality and intention to the design. I think there is always a clear difference between a design that is well informed and has had a lot of thought kind of put into it ahead of time versus a design that's just kind of being made for the sake of having a character. Um, so for like two examples, I want to talk about Void Souls because I think that what Kartik and everyone else did on Void Souls is really unique and fun and interesting and shows how these things can be incorporated into a game that is as simple as Void Souls. Is that even the design of these archer enemies, the way that they're shaped evokes the fact that they are ranged. Like they're kind of shaped like little arrows to me. The way that they have the three spikes in the back kind of remind me of like the tail end of the arrows that they themselves shoot. Uh, like these, I don't think that this would have been as effective if they were just like a square or they didn't have like the points that they have arranged in the way that they are. So even if you're making a game that is comprised of shapes, there's still like thought and intention that could be put into it. And even in things like Baldur's Gate, for example, which is very story and character driven, you have Karlach, where every part of her design kind of feeds back into who she is. She has scars and a broken horn because she fights a lot. She has this glowing chest and these little metal things, exhaust pipes kind of on her shoulders, not just because they look cool, but because she quite literally has an engine in her chest. She's a tiefling, so that informs like the ears and the horns. Her outfit, she's a barbarian. Barbarians traditionally in Dungeons and Dragons do not wear armor, so the fact that she's wearing this very stripy leather like outfit that doesn't necessarily protect her is because she is a barbarian. So even with two very different games, there's still thought that can be put into a design. So one thing I like to do is list it out. For this presentation, I'm going to kind of show off 3 designs that I've done semi-recently. And each of these columns is kind of like a list of important aspects of this character that I want to keep in mind as I'm going throughout the design process. So for one, we have like a young princess, took over the kingdom young, religious figure. I wanted Gaelic and Celtic influence, medieval era, symbol of hope and stability. For another one, Earth Genasi, street fighter, kind of wanted to go into Muay Thai influences. He lives on the street. He's rough around the edges. I really wanted to delve into modern and street clothing as far as his style. And then for the last one, it's a Kitsune spellcaster. I wanted Japanese influence. This is an oracle that communes with the dead and spirits. I wanted someone who kind of looked a bit frail and gaunt and ghostly. Someone who kind of gave off priestess, oracle vibes. So just taking like 5-10 minutes to sit down and kind of make bullet points of the most important things that you want to convey through a design is a great step to take. So the next step is mood boards. So what is a mood board? A mood board is basically just a collection of images and references to help you with brainstorming a design. It can really be anything. It can just be vibes, clothing, hair, shoes, weapons, textures, colors, like anything where you look at it and you're like, this reminds me of the character, or this is kind of what I want to go for. You can put it on a mood board. And you can either kind of make one big mood board where you just kind of have one board and you slap everything on there, or you can separate them out into different ones. So you can have a specific mood board for weapons, for example, another mood board for hair, another mood board for colors, so on and so forth. It kind of just depends on what you like to do and what will kind of help you organize your references better. Where do you make mood boards? Anywhere where you can collect images or videos or whatever else you have is a good place to make a mood board. Some basic places, you have Pinterest. It is the premier mood board website. You can make boards in sections, so it's a good place to do all in one board, or if you want to separate it out, you can make sections within a board. You already have image searching kind of built into there. You can add in your own images, and there are browser extensions where you can add in images from other sites. PureRef is a reference program that's pretty popular among a lot of artists. It allows you to kind of just collect and arrange images in a controlled space. I'm pretty sure the program itself lets you, like, the window is pinned on top. So you can easily have your references up on top of where you're drawing, so you can easily kind of look back and forth. You could take notes on there. It's a really good program. A lot of people like it. Me personally, I'm simple. I usually just do my mood boards on my art program, so Clip Studio Paint is what I use. But whatever you draw in, Clip Studio, Photoshop, Fire Alpaca, just copy and paste your images onto an existing canvas or a new one. There you go. It's a mood board. And where do you find references? So of course you have places like Pinterest and ArtStation. I am a little particular with ArtStation just because I don't necessarily like including references to designs that people have already made, if that makes sense. Like if I feel like I'm making like a shaman character, I don't want to take designs from other artists of shamans that they make because I don't want my design to end up too derivative of those. But still a good place to look. Just doing Google searches and image searches are good. And one thing that I think is underutilized that I think more people should do and that I've been trying to do is looking at, things like history and museum websites and books, fashion websites like Vogue, free image sites like photobash.org, etc. Sometimes you can get really consumed by pre-existing IPs or designs or other drawings that you can really neglect a lot of the great references that you can get from real life. So take time and look at those. And even if you are doing something like fantasy or sci-fi, I think there's still a lot of good things that you can refer back to through like fashion and history that can make your design unique. So these are examples of mood boards. Like this is the mood board that I did for the princess, where I have a lot of like medieval style oil paintings just for vibes. I have references for hair, for dresses and outfits. I have references for like the Virgin Mary and her portraits just because I feel like I want my princess design to kind of serve a similar function of like a young, holy woman who is kind of like a pinnacle of society, so I wanted to add her on there. these are mood boards that I did for my Street Fighter of Genasi character. So a lot of references to Muay Thai and the different things that they wear, different street clothing, things that are more designed versus things that are kind of a bit more thrown together and put together just because he is someone who lives on the streets. So he's not going to be as clean as compared to a lot of the more fashion references. This is more so for different textures and accessories and stuff. And especially for my Oracle character, I did a lot of mood boards just because I wanted to do research on like Japanese, hairstyles and fashions and things of that nature. I have a whole mood board for kimonos from like traditional to more fashion interpretations. I have a mood board for the different textures that is incorporated into her outfit, so I know how to render those and how to draw those. So the next step is thumbnailing. What are thumbnails? Thumbnails are basically quick sketches to help get out and test ideas. This should be a safe place for you to test out things like silhouettes, shapes, outfits, whatever. The key thing here is that these should be quick and loose. If you are someone where you kind of start drawing and you get into the details and the next thing you know, you spend an hour or something, set a timer if you have to. Like maybe at most 5 minutes per. Like you're just getting out ideas. It doesn't matter if they're good, bad, or somewhere in between. There are a lot of different ways that you can do thumbnails. The best way to do it is whichever way is quickest and easiest for you. So you can see that these are thumbnails by some other artists. Here at the top left, you can see that this kind of has like more line work in gray tones. Down here at the bottom right, you can see that these are more like black blobs that kind of have some erasing work and some midtones kind of put in. And these are examples of my kind of thumbnails of just quick sketches of outfits that I did for the princess where I'm trying out different hairstyles, different crowns, all of that stuff. These are thumbnails for Onyx's outfits where we're trying out street clothing, different ways to kind of interpret and for him to wear the jacket, shoes, things of that nature. And these are thumbnails for my Oracle, where we try out a bunch of different kimonos and hairstyles and, all of that. The important thing with thumbnails is that you really want to push yourself to try out different silhouettes. So when you're doing a bunch of thumbnails, you don't want to get to the end of your thumbnails and you have like 5, 10, 15 things that all look very similar. You want to try and push yourself to try different things, even if you don't necessarily think it's going to work. You can still end up with really interesting things to incorporate once you get to the end. And then we have refining. So at this point, I basically kind of pick the thumbnail sketches that I enjoy the most, pick out, certain things that stick out to me in each, and combine different aspects to create the final design and really start ironing that out. At this point, we're still doing sketches for the most part, but we're also incorporating maybe some poses and things into the mix. I'm spending a little bit more time doing details and things. And you want to choose a pose that kind of shows off the design, but also communicates the vibe of the character. I think especially if you are making a design where you need to present it to someone or sell a design to someone else, it's always good to have a pose, even if you do like a plain T pose and A pose alongside the action pose, because that really brings a character to life and helps sell, who they are, what their vibe is, all of that. So, for example, if you look at these like design sheets, you can see that these artists chose a pose that helps to show off the outfit. Like, not too much of the character is scrunched up or hidden in these poses. Like, you can still very clearly see, you know, what they're wearing and what they have going on. But at the same time, these poses kind of inform the vibe of this character. So you have like this kind of strong old man with his giant tree branch. And the way that he's posed really invokes the power that he has. And down here for this Overwatch design, you can see and really get the feel for this personality, where you have someone who's a bit more fun, animated, all of that. And these are kind of like my refinements here. You can see that I'm kind of going through, you can tell kind of what details I like the most. I'm combining them in different ways and figuring out, you know, what combination I like the most. And I'm choosing a pose that I feel like goes with the character. Here with Onyx, you can see that I kind of put him in an action pose to, you know, not only show off his personality, but it also shows, you know, how he moves and fights in his outfit, because he is a fighter. That's a key aspect of his character. And for Inari, you know, for this project, I tried out, you know, a couple of different poses, and she's not a very big personality, pretty quiet, pretty keeps to herself, mysterious, ghostly woman. So wanted to choose a pose that kind of evokes that. Values and colors. This is important. Please look at your values. I did not look at my values for the longest time, and then I took a mentorship and my eyes were opened. Sometimes the values within your design are more important than the colors that you choose. And you want to make sure that your details and areas of interest are easy to read in grayscale. If it's blending together in black and white, it's not going to stand out that well in color. So something that I don't think is necessarily taught a lot of the time, especially if you're like self-teaching yourself in art and things, is to check your values. So put your canvas in black and white and make sure that everything looks good. So here's a demonstration. This is a quick sketch I did of this cute little girl character. On the left here, we have values that are pretty different, like the hair is pretty different from the skin. The bow and the dress are pretty different from the rest of it. Like, each of these areas stand out in their own way. Whereas on the right, we have values that blend in more. And I also put a version here where it's zoomed out. And this is a great thing to do, is to put it in black and white and zoom it out, because then you can kind of really tell where things start to blend together. And even like squint your eyes. If you're squinting your eyes and it all kind of turns into the same shade of like black gray, that's a bad sign. And that means that you need to push your values more. And then here's a version with the colors applied. The only, like, as far as like these two designs, the same colors were applied. The only difference is the hues. And you can see between these two designs, the colors in general aren't that bad. Like, even on the right, the pink with the rest of it, it's not a bad color combination. But you can see that the left one, things like the hair and the bow and the dress stand out a lot more. Whereas with the right design, everything kind of blends in. You don't necessarily have like particular places where your eyes are drawn. And this is very important to do, because sometimes when you think you have a color issue, it's actually a value issue. And that's why it's important to check your values. Check your values, everyone. And then choosing colors. I will be the first to say I am not a color theory guru. I kind of function off of vibes a lot of the time. And there are a lot of videos on YouTube that can probably explain actual color theory a lot better than I can. So here's kind of a bullet point of things to consider when choosing your colors. One is the color harmony. If you're doing like complementary, monochromatic, triad, things of that nature. I love Adobe Color. It's a good site. You can go on there and like put in a hex code for a color, and it'll tell you like all the different harmonies and what colors will go good with it. So if you have a problem choosing colors, go on there. Color psychology, so thing like the meaning of colors. So like red being like passion and violence, and blue being sad, and yellow kind of being associated with happiness. If this also goes back to knowing the purpose of your character and who they are as a person. So if you have a character who is really in touch with nature, like a druid or something, maybe you want to pull from more earthy colors like greens and browns and things of that nature. Next point is the environment. If you are making a game or any sort of project and the environment is mostly blue, you might not want to put a blue character on top of it. Just a thought, unless you are really like pushing the values between the different shades of blue. Of course, the values, things like the saturation of a color, like is going to change the values of it. So pay attention to your values. That's going to inform your color choices. And then, of course, things like what makes sense for the design and what are you happy with personally. So again, examples. Again, void souls, because I think it's really interesting and it really kind of shows that even if you're making something really simple, these are things you have to think about. One being that the main triangle is bright white, which means that it stands out really well in Void Souls where the environments are fairly dark. And then you have the NPC and the enemy shapes, where they are black with white outlines, which automatically kind of differentiates them from the main character. And you also have the fact that they do have the white outlines to help pop them out from the background, which is dark. Because remember, dark background, if they were just black, they would fade in a lot of places. So the white outlines really pop them out. So those are all kind of informed decisions there. And of course, you have like Blue Diamond from Steven Universe, where there are layers to this. You have, of course, she's blue because she's based off of the Blue Diamond, the actual rock. So she's blue. But also, she's a sad character. She's known for crying a lot. So blue also lines up with that aspect of her. And if I put this presentation in black and white, you can also see the values probably, because you have the dress, which is the darkest part. You have her hair, which is really light. And then you have her skin, which is kind of like this tone in between. So in Blue Diamond, you have a nice spread of both of value. And so even if you're doing like a monochromatic character, I think it's even more important to look at your values. And then again, kind of going back to my designs, you can see the values here for Onyx's design. His outfit is mostly pretty dark, so I decided to do a lighter value for his jacket. And his hair is also a really light value to kind of make it an aspect of him that really kind of stands out and pops out from the rest of it. These are my values for Inari here, where again we have the white hair, which sticks out a lot. She herself is very pale, so she's pretty light in value. And so a lot of her kimono is kind of like this mid to dark gradient of color. And then you have the pops of light with the band in the middle and the see-through fabric. And here you can see how like different color explorations I was doing. And because the values for Inari are pretty solid, you can see that even when I change up the colors that I put on top of it, the design still kind of holds together because it has that foundation. And then we have the rendering and the final presentation. This is your time to make it pretty. We've figured out the design, we know the colors, we know all of that. Now it's time to render the design, and include other elements to help communicate it to other people. So these are things like materials, orthographic views for the 3D modelers, extra notes, extra sketches to show movement or abilities, callouts. All of these are things that you can incorporate onto a character sheet if you are presenting it to anyone in general, company or otherwise. So examples. This is a lovely dress design by Jane Katsubo. In here you can see that she has a front view, she has a back view, she has these little callouts of materials and references. So you have like the blue gem of the headband, the twisting kind of bark, the different embroideries, the fabrics, all good things for the modelers and the people in charge to know so they understand what this is made out of. We have this Murloc design by Tamberchi, and you see that he has kind of a more action pose design to show it kind of hunched over and in action almost. And then on this side, you have the design broken up, where you can see more so how this creature is shaped. You have the legs, the arms, these extra back arms here, the face, all of that. And then these are some of my sheets. So for Nari's design here, we have her main pose here. I did a version of what the front of her kimono looks like since her hands kind of cover it in the primary pose. We have callouts for materials, callouts for the different flower design elements on her kimono, and of course a back view. I did sheets for, different accessories, for example, the mask to kind of show the different patterns and materials and references for that. For Onyx, we have like the different ways that he wears his jacket. So him with his jacket on, him with his jacket just kind of tied around his neck, him without it at all, so you can see what this shirt looks like underneath. We have callouts for his lanyard and all the things that he keeps on it and materials. And then, of course, for my princess design, we have different notes and material callouts and even a little blurb going over, just the basics of who she is as a character. So yeah, that's basically kind of a run through of all the steps that I go through in my character design process, for the most part. So if anyone has any questions about any parts of that process or just art questions in general, I'll talk about anything. Truly. So let me take a look-see at the chat. What is something that you struggled with as you worked on your process? Things that I struggle with for my process. I think one part that I struggle with is kind of like the rendering part. I'm more of someone who thrives a bit more in the sketching and the design phase, and then I get to rendering and it feels like a chore. And I haven't necessarily found a rendering style that kind of helps with that. So actually going through and rendering out like materials and stuff is hard. Like rendering metals and like fabrics especially is pretty difficult. And I think, of course, you have, classic things of like art block where you're trying to do design, but you're not quite evoking like the vibe or the energy that you're trying to get. And in that stage, it's just a lot of like iteration and just time you have to spend on that. So I think rendering, but sometimes you have an image in your head and it's a bit hard to find that execution or the exact design that you're trying to go for. I mentioned while doing several thumbnails to avoid them all having the same silhouette. What's a trick to make sure you're constantly generating a unique silhouette? Are there some changes you can make to a silhouette which are more meaningful than others? Great question. This is something that I am currently working on, is really pushing my silhouettes. And I think that's something more recently that I've learned while in a mentorship is to really make your process more iterative, which means that you do a sketch and then you copy and paste it and you push it, which I can even like switch over to Clip Studio Paint to open up a project to kind of show an example here. So hold on. If Discord will let me change my window here. So this is a mushroom horn that I designed, which all of these things can apply to things like environments and items as well. By the way, I think if you start treating objects in environments like characters, you also end up having better designs. But even for like this mushroom design, the thing that I did is that I started with a sketch and then I copied and pasted it over and I looked at it. I'm like, okay, what is like a shape here that I can really push? And which each version, I just kind of pushed it to make it bigger. So even with like this tuba, for example, you know, we have the first one here that's pretty simple, but with each one I'm like, okay, let's push the size of this top mushroom horn a little bit and like really get it there. So I think a good way to really generate unique silhouettes is to make your thumbnails more iterative. So you don't necessarily need to make, you know, the perfect silhouette in the first go. Sometimes you kind of start somewhere and then you just keep adding on to it a few times until you get something unique. And what's the other part? Are there some changes you can make to a silhouette which are more meaningful than others? Is there changes you can make which are more meaningful than others? I think it kind of depends on what you're doing. The thing I would keep in mind there is like what like it kind of goes back to who the character is, right? So, for example, if I'm thumbnailing for like the princess character, one of her major aspects is that she's like a religious symbol. So if I am trying to really push her silhouette, maybe I really make her crown a lot bigger to make it really evoke the feeling of like a halo or something like that. The fact that she's young and she took over the throne, maybe I really make her outfit a lot baggier and like really push that aspect of it to evoke that feeling of she's someone who's young, who's been thrust into this position. So I would go back to thinking about, you know, what are the most important aspects of this character and really work on exaggerating those and adding to those. Okay, what's here? This question might be a bit of a big ask, but could you do a quick once through of the presentation, highlight some of the terminology you covered? I'm already forgetting some of them may be familiar terms to you, but it may help me in other call outs, words you heard. Okay, yeah, I can do that. Let me switch back to the presentation. Ha 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 ha. Okay. So let me just see. The comments are very helpful to know when communicating with artists, I hope. Yeah. So terminology highlight reel. Let me go through and I'll try and pick out words that I feel like is good to understand, but if you see anything else, be sure you can stop me and ask me to explain it a bit more. So I think all of these mood boards, like I said before, is a collection of images and references that help with brainstorming. These images and references can be anything as long as they help get you closer to the final design. These are really good if you are not an artist too, because these kind of help communicate what you want to the artists. I function a lot better when I'm given references and stuff just to make sure that what I'm thinking of and who I'm working with is thinking of, that we're on the same page. So if you are hiring someone to do a design, always good to have a mood board or a collection of references that you can hand to them. These are all basic things, the mood boards, thumbnailing, quick sketches. You're focusing on silhouettes and shapes and just getting your ideas out into paper. I think most of the terms were on, let me see. Yeah, so color harmonies. These are your basic combination of colors, like complementary colors, triads, split complementary, monochromatic. So all the things where it's like, look at the color wheel and choose the colors that are this distance away from each other. Color psychology, all of that. Values. The difference between values and hues. The values is light and dark, so the black and white and how it looks when something is in black and white, those are values. The hues is going to be your actual like red, black, red, blue, yellow, all of that. Okay, all the terms here. Materials, what is your object or clothing article made out of? So whether it is stone or a fabric, what type of fabric it is, if it's silk versus cotton, or if it's nylon. All good things to keep in mind. The orthographic views are basically the turnarounds to help with 3D modeling. So in the 3D program, it would be like the front, the back, the side. So the 3D modeler can go in and know how to model it. Notes, sketches, and callouts are basically kind of you going into more detail on specific aspects of a design. So for example, where am I? Okay, like this mask is a call out because it's here on the design, but in the call out, I'm going more into detail on what the mask looks like up close and the designs on it. These flowers are a call out because I'm taking the flowers out of her outfits and I'm really going into detail of what the flowers are and what they look like. So a call out's a bit of a general term, but it's basically you know, taking something and expanding on it more. If a character has a weapon, you can do a call out where you go into more detail about what the weapon looks like or how it shoots and things of that nature. So yeah, let me know if there's any other terms that you would like explained, but yeah. Do you recycle sketches for other projects and characters? I think it depends on what I'm doing. Like for example, it depends on the project and how similar they are. For example, if I have two characters that have a very similar body type, maybe I would use the same base to brainstorm outfits on top of. I think you can also, one of the things that I've learned more recently is you can utilize kit bashing a lot. So you can take a lot of your previous sketches and kind of like cut and paste different parts of them together to make new designs, which is what I've been doing for creature design stuff. So I would take a bunch of like my warm-up sketches of different animals and I would just cut and paste and slap them together to make new creatures. And that's a great strategy, especially if you're having a day where the ideas aren't necessarily flowing or you must want to do something real quick. But yeah, sometimes I do. I think it depends on the characters or what I'm working on, but that is something that sometimes pops up. Do I have any thoughts on how these concepts you shared may change when trying to build customizable characters? How do you allow players to personalize their characters while still meeting these best practices? That's a good question for customizable characters. We can kind of go through. So, customizable kind of goes back to like the purpose, right? It might be faster to scroll actually. So, when you are breaking down, who or what I'm designing, one bullet point is going to be like, we're making parts for a customizable character. And that can be informed by the game a lot, honestly. Like the customizable aspects that you would get in a game like, I don't know, Raft is going to be different than the customizable things that you get in a game like Baldur's Gate, right? Because Raft takes place in a raft in the middle of the ocean during whatever time period, and Baldur's Gate is a high fantasy kind of medieval Middle Ages game. So automatically that kind of narrows down like what things you would want to incorporate. And then from there I would be like, okay, what are things that a character on a raft would wear? Like maybe I want to design like a bunch of torn up shirts or raggedy pants and jeans. Maybe we want swimsuits. Maybe we want hairstyles. If you're doing something that a player would customize, I will also keep in mind, am I making, a kit of things that's inclusive to everyone, like skin tones or hairstyles and things of that nature? Um, all of that's still gonna kind of inform, what you're doing. Uh, you can still make mood boards based on that. You can still do your references kind of based on that. The only thing that would super duper change is like the colors and the values, because of course the player is going to have a bit more control over, choosing what they are. I guess it depends on whether you are doing a game with like a color wheel versus a game where you have outfits with preset palettes. Um, because again, Baldur's Gate, I'm obsessed with the game. I'm sorry. A lot of the color palettes in that game are predetermined, so you would make a bunch of color palettes for each outfit that would keep that stuff in mind. But if you're doing a game with a color wheel, that might be less of an issue, though you would still need to choose, like what colors are changeable. Which I think a good thing to look at that is even like The Sims, because the models are blocked out in the way. You can probably find images because and then like it shows like what things on each outfit you could adjust the color for. Um, and I guess that would kind of replace that aspect of color and rendering and things. Yeah, sometimes they're just gonna make ugly outfits, and that's okay. At that point, you're just focusing on making the individual pieces themselves fit in with whatever you're making. And then from there, is up to whoever gets their hands on the game. Okay. Are there any other questions? Design or art or otherwise? Of course, you're all welcome. I hope everyone got something from this.